"You're not family, Clara. You're just the maid who never left. I paid the mortgage, their meds, even the birthday cake on the table. But somehow I was still the outsider in my own house. I didn't argue. I didn't stay. And by morning, they'd unknowingly danced through their final night under my roof. The house never echoed when I walked in. It sighed, like it knew what I carried: solar panels, torque, wrenches, bruises, silence. I was always the one who stayed late, who climbed back up when the inverter fried in triple-digit heat, who patched mistakes others left behind without saying a word, who brought snacks for the crew even though no one brought them for me. Steady hands, quiet eyes, no drama. That's how I got through life. That's how I thought I'd earn love. See, I believed if I just worked harder, stayed soft, never made waves, maybe someday they'd look at me and say, "We're proud of you, Clara." But they never did. Not once. I'm 33, a solar technician by trade, the only woman on my install team. I've got knees that ache in the rain and calluses that no lotion can fix. My coworkers call me Watt Queen as a joke, but I know my circuits, my lines, my angles. I wire roofs like poetry. I earned my living on rooftops while my brother slept in, paid my way through certifications while my sister's husband picked up her car note. No one ever handed me anything, especially not in my family. I was the good daughter, which meant invisible. Mom used to say girls who climb roofs don't climb into good marriages. Dad laughed like it was wisdom. Vanessa would roll her eyes and say I had lesbian energy, even though I'd never dated anyone long enough for labels. Truth is, I was too damn tired. While they talked, I saved. No vacations, no shopping binges, no lattes unless I had a coupon, just 10-hour days and side jobs at night, crawling under decks and attics with spiders and fiberglass. At 28, I closed on my first home. 3 beds, 1.5 baths, a fig tree out back that my neighbor swore was cursed, but I kept anyway. The mortgage was reasonable, the insulation solid. The place smelled like lemon cleaner and potential. I signed the final paperwork alone. Mom had a pedicure. Dad said the drive was too far for something you should have done with a man. I opened a bottle of grocery store champagne and sat cross-legged on the dusty living room floor, staring at the ceiling I now owned. And I felt proud. Quietly, deeply proud. It lasted exactly 18 months. Then came the call. Clara, we're in a bit of a tight spot. Just for a little while. Dad's pension had vanished into unpaid debt. Mom couldn't work anymore, her hands too swollen to ring up groceries. My brother Julian had moved back in with them after dropping out of barber school. Vanessa lived 15 minutes away in a 5-bedroom her husband's parents helped finance, but said she had too much on her plate. And so it began. I gave them my master bedroom, told myself it was temporary, but time stretched like chewed gum. 6 months, a year, 2. And slowly the air in my home changed. Mom started telling me how I should decorate. Dad adjusted the thermostat like he paid for it. Julian blasted his video games all night, and when I asked him to keep it down, he said, "You're so uptight, sis. It's just noise." When I brought up bills, Mom clutched her chest like I'd slapped her. "We raised you, Clara. You'd throw your own parents into the street. I was working 60 hours a week to cover utilities, groceries, gas prescriptions, and suddenly, Starbucks runs for Julian and imported tea for Mom. Dad needed a memory foam pillow. Julian needed high-speed internet. And somehow, I always had the good shampoo. I remember one night coming home bone-tired from an emergency job in Barstow. My boots were covered in dirt, my arms sunburned. I opened the fridge, hoping for something cold. There was nothing left. Julian had forgotten to buy more drinks after finishing the last of my Gatorade. Mom said, "You could have texted me what to get." I had. The message was still unread. I stopped doing laundry on weekends because Mom would pull my clothes out mid-wash to do Julian's socks. The living room became Dad's movie theater. He watched war documentaries so loud I had to take work calls from my car. One night, I tried locking the hallway bathroom because I just wanted 1 hour to soak in peace. They called it selfish. Vanessa said, well, at least they're not homeless. That would be worse. The shame in her voice wasn't for me. It was for the inconvenience I apparently caused. And through it all, I stayed quiet. because they were family, because good daughters don't complain, because I thought one day they'd say thank you, but they never did. Instead, they moved through my house like they owned it, left crumbs judgments and used up my kindness like it was bottomless. Still, I kept making space. I shrunk to fit their needs, until there was nothing left of me but walls. The turning point wasn't a loud explosion. It was a quiet, calculated erosion until everything cracked. It started with Sarah. We met through a job site. She was on the planning team for a green housing initiative. Smart, steady. The kind of woman who noticed when I was limping but didn't ask until I was ready to say why. She didn't care that my hands were calloused or that I smelled like soldering resin half the week. She just saw me. For our 6-month anniversary, I planned a dinner. Nothing extravagant. Just us, steaks, string lights in the backyard, the good plates I only used when I wanted to feel like a person and not a tool. I left a note on the fridge that morning. Please don't use the kitchen tonight. I've got plans. Even added a smiley face. Came home that evening with roses in one hand and Sarah's favorite wine in the other. The house smelled like garlic and beer. I walked into chaos. My dad and Julian were parked on the couch watching sports, shouting like drunk frat boys. Empty beer bottles clinked underfoot. The steaks I'd bought were half-eaten on paper plates. The lights I'd strung earlier were tangled with balloons. My mom had invited Vanessa and her twins over unannounced and turned the night into a family dinner. I just stood there stunned, wine sweating in my palm. Sarah texted that she was outside. I met her on the porch, face burning. We ended up eating drive-thru in my truck. She left early. 2 days later, she ghosted me. I don't blame her. When I confronted my family, my mom actually laughed. Honey, it's just dinner. You can have your little date any night. But family, that's forever. That night, I packed 2 duffel bags. I didn't scream, didn't slam doors. I just started folding. Vanessa showed up halfway through, took one look and said, "Oh, come on, Clara, don't be dramatic. You're making this about steak." No, it wasn't about the steak. It was about never being allowed to have something of my own. Not a night, not a room, not peace. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "They have until morning." And that's when the performance began. Mom sobbed like I'd sentenced her to death. Dad clutched his side like he suddenly had heart trouble. Julian threw a tantrum worthy of a toddler. Vanessa wrinkled her nose like I'd farted in church. "You'd really throw your parents onto the street. What kind of daughter does that? You've changed, Clara. You used to be kind." I froze. Kind. As if kindness meant setting myself on fire to keep everyone warm. I put down the bags. My hands were shaking, and I gave in. Again. I apologized, ordered pizza, cleaned the kitchen myself while they watched TV. That night, I cried on the floor of the garage, my garage next to the solar inverter I hadn't had time to repair because I'd been too busy being their unpaid maid. The next morning, I went to work like nothing happened, told myself to toughen up. It's what I always did. But things only got worse. Mom started complaining that I micromanaged the house whenever I asked about bills. Dad declared the living room a no-work zone, so I couldn't even spread out project notes without a fight. Julian moved his gaming setup into the dining room because the Wi-Fi signal was stronger. I tripped over cords twice and banged my shin on a speaker. When I asked him to move it, he grinned and said, "Why don't you just work somewhere else? The garage, maybe, isn't that your vibe anyway?" He said, "You're, like," it was sarcasm. I laughed it off, but it felt like being slapped. Even Vanessa joined in. She started visiting weekly with her twins, treating the place like a free daycare and me like the babysitter. One time I came home from a site install to find Julian teaching her 8-year-old how to vape. When I said something, Mom snapped. "He's just trying to be the fun uncle. Don't be such a buzzkill. Fun uncle." And me, I was the buzzkill. The housekeeper, the paycheck, the ghost. Things broke physically before they broke emotionally. It was a Tuesday on a commercial job, heat waves rising off the roof bolts, sticking in the afternoon metal. I'd worked 11 days straight covering for a sick coworker, pushing my body past reason because I had to keep the bills paid. We were unloading panels when the crane jolted. The glass edge of a 300-watt panel caught me right across the ribs. I dropped instantly. breath gone, bones buckling. The hospital lights buzzed like wasps above me. My side was burning. Breathing felt like chewing gravel. 3 broken ribs, dislocated hip, hairline fracture in my pelvis. I woke up alone. Then I saw him, Jared, my crew lead, holding a bag of snacks and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Called your folks," he said. "They said they'd try to come if they could find a ride." Find a ride. My car was in our driveway. My keys were in the bowl by the front door. They had nothing but time, but that was too much effort. When I got discharged 5 days later, Jared drove me home, carried my duffel bag, set me up in the guest room. I couldn't make it up to the master, not without screaming pain. I'd left a schedule taped to the fridge. Pain meds, meals, just the basics, just a little help. I begged. Nobody followed it. 2 missed doses, excruciating spikes. I could barely lift my arm. When I asked my mom why she didn't remind me, she sighed and said, "Clara, I'm not your nurse. Set an alarm like everyone else." My phone was 6 steps away on the dresser. 6 steps I couldn't take. The silence after that moment wasn't peaceful. It was poisonous. It buzzed between us in the kitchen, crackled through the hall like static. I stopped asking for help, stopped expecting it. The pain became a constant hum under my skin, more familiar than the voices of the people who lived under my roof. When Jared came by one afternoon and saw the state I was in, clothes piled up trash, not taken out, pain meds untouched, he nearly lost it. "This isn't just lazy. This is neglect, Clara. You've been carrying them for 5 years and they can't even make you a damn sandwich while you're injured." I wanted to defend them. I really did. But I couldn't find a single reason that didn't sound like I was lying to myself. That night, as I lay in bed, ribs aching, throat dry, fan humming too loud, it hit me. They didn't forget to help. They chose not to, because I wasn't useful anymore. And if I wasn't useful, I was invisible. So I made a decision. No more second chances. No more emotional negotiations. No more hoping they'd change. I was going to evict them. But not with shouting or ultimatums. I'd do it the right way. Quiet, clean, permanent. The next morning, before anyone was awake, I opened my laptop, searched for local attorneys, found one who specialized in landlord-tenant disputes, even messy, emotionally tangled ones. His name was Mr. Patel, older guy, patient voice. Didn't flinch when I explained my situation. They're not on the lease. "But they've been there for 5 years, I said. "Do I even have a case?" He didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. They're legal occupants without a contract. You'll need to serve formal eviction notices. 30 days is standard. Keep it documented. Keep it civil." I nodded. "I want them out." He paused. "Family evictions are the worst. They'll use every weapon, guilt, reputation, even sabotage. Be ready." I was. Over the next week, I moved slowly but methodically. Jared helped me rent a small storage unit nearby. We cleared out my workshop, first tools, paperwork, birth certificate, deed to the house backup hard drives. Anything I couldn't risk them destroying out of spite. Next, I changed all my account passwords, bank email, Wi-Fi. I called the mortgage company and removed any authorized contacts, made sure my parents' names were never tied to a single cent. Then came the cameras. I installed 1 in the hallway, 1 near the garage, 1 in the living room, all legal, all recording motion-triggered clips to cloud storage. Mr. Patel confirmed everything was above board. When the notices arrived, delivered by certified mail, I placed them gently on the kitchen counter. One addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Reyes, the other to Julian Reyes. I didn't say a word, just went back to my room and locked the door. The eruption came 2 hours later. "You can't do this!" My mom screamed, pounding on my bedroom door like it owed her money. "You're abandoning your family." Dad's voice was quieter, but colder. "You're just angry because we stopped babying you. Julian." He kicked the door and yelled, "You're a traitor, Clara. After everything we've done for you, I texted Jared. They're spiraling, but I'm calm. I've got this," he replied with a thumbs up and a pizza emoji. It made me smile for the first time in weeks. Then Vanessa showed up. Of course she did. She slammed the front door so hard one of my rosemary pots tipped over. "You're destroying the family," she said through clenched teeth. "You could have just asked us to help. We would have worked something out." My laugh was dry. I asked for help every day. None of you listened. That night, I stayed in my locked room, ate granola bars and drank room temp Gatorade, watched their movements through the security app on my phone, my own version of reality TV. They talked like I wasn't there, plotted how to convince me I was overreacting. Julian even said he could call a friend who knew someone who could mess with legal stuff. I took screenshots. I said nothing. Let them believe I was still the same Clara, still soft, still afraid, until the next morning. That's when I found the kitchen flooded. Someone had jammed paper towels in the sink and left the tap running all night. Everything under the cabinet was ruined. Water pooled near the fridge. The tile was slick and dangerous. Julian walked in as I was mopping and smiled. "Oops, guess we forgot to shut it off." I said nothing, just took photos, sent them straight to Mr. Patel with the subject line, "Sabotage Documentation, Week 1. The next day, the thermostat was set to 90 degrees, then 60 degrees. My medications went missing for 24 hours. Someone accidentally unplugged the Wi-Fi during my telehealth appointment. And through it all, I said nothing, just collected evidence, just waited, like solar panels soaking up daylight. Week 2 felt like psychological warfare. It wasn't just the sabotage, it was the manipulation layered into every word, every look. Mom started leaving religious pamphlets outside my door, passages about forgiveness, about the sin of pride. Dad took to narrating his war documentaries loud enough for me to hear. They turned on their own, you know. Betrayal always comes from the inside. Julian began hosting friends again, loud, unwashed boys with loud, unwashed opinions. One of them parked in my spot and said, "Man, your sister's intense," like I was a bitter ex-wife, not the person paying the mortgage. I held my tongue, let the cameras do the watching, let the file grow thicker for Mr. Patel. Then came the escalation. One afternoon, I was on the couch icing my hip after a brutal therapy session when I heard a crash. Glass. I dragged myself toward the noise, slow and aching, and saw Julian in the living room with a hammer in hand.